The problem with older structures like this deck here, this is one of my projects here in we're in Park Hills, Fort Wright, Kentucky. The problem that most homeowners face with one of these middle-aged deck systems, they embrace thin residential deck paints and stains, right, for middle-aged weathered wood. Really, they shouldn't be embracing them at all. But I'll tell you why they specifically shouldn't be embracing them on middle-aged structures like this. If you look at this deck, it has thousands of openings on it, lines. That's what we call that, a hairline crack. And it also has fastener entry point openings, right, where the nails are driven into the wood. This deck has a disintegrating stain on it. We just washed this and there's not much of it left. It's less than paper thin, so the pressure washer just basically just evaporated any of it that was on here. But here's a little bit of it that's left. This film has never, ever been able to cover in these cracks or cover over these fastener entry points, right? And because of that, it's left this deck system widely open to water its entire life. And why is that a problem? It's a problem, two reasons. Well, there's multiple more reasons, but two main ones. It causes massive expansion and contraction when your deck boards are just openly accepting water, meaning you don't have physical barrier protection over top of them, closing off these cracks and closing off these fastener entry points where water can get down into the boards. The water gets down in there, it swells. Then when the air can accept the water out of the boards, it contracts. We get rain again, or we get high humidity with a lot of water in the air, and planks swell back up. They contract. So having your deck system coated in a thin residential deck paint or stain with all of its water entry points open, expansion and contraction process that's very natural. But what happens is, what we know is those that use thin residential deck paints and stains, they go through this process, or a lot more than my company's customers. What's my company? Long Armor industrial grade coating system that has some advantages that I'll tell you about after I tell you about reason number 2 why you shouldn't use thin residential deck paints and stains. The fastener entry points on this deck. What am I talking about when I say fastener entry point? I'm talking about screw head, where they've been driven into the wood, right? This deck system had a major advantage over some other decks. It's got galvanized nails in it. And I'm a big fan of galvanized nails because it takes them about 20 to 25 years to start to show any signs of rust or corrosion. And we can extend that, we're smart, but from the use of thin residential deck paints and stains and never properly closing off these cracks, you see how this crack will let water in and take water directly to that fastener? And because the hole itself, no coverage over top of the fastener holes themselves, water has direct access to the fasteners. We now have galvanized nails in this deck that are starting to rust, corrode. Big mistake. Big mistake. That's the mistake that deck owners make. And they make it because they don't have any other choice. They're not marketed industrial grade coatings from anybody really besides my company here in Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati. And most of them don't know about me, right? We pay thousands of dollars a month to reach people via ads to try to tell them, hey, we can completely waterlock your deck. We can almost completely close it off to water and the entry of water. We can drastically limit that expansion and contraction process, because we're drastically cutting down the amount of swelling and contracting. This equals your deck system's life being extended almost indefinitely. It's an amazing advantage, right? That if deck owners really understood how much of an advantage it was, they'd be ringing my phone off the hook. It ends up costing them tens of thousands of dollars over the life of their ownership by using thin residential deck paints and stains. We can keep them from getting into a situation where they have rusty fasteners like this, because our coating system, it's 30 to 50 times thicker than thin residential deck paints and stains, and it will completely close off the fastener entry points, right? Where the nails and the screws go down into the wood and leave that little hole. That's a fastener entry point, right here. Look, see? Our coating system will completely close that off. Physical barrier protection, right? Where there's no way for water to get there. You need that, especially as deck screws. They don't tell you, but deck screws are just metal with a nanotech coating over top of them. And most of that coating, it's driven off of it. The technician, when the worker drives the fastener into the wood, the friction burns most of that protective coating off. And so when you have a deck floor with all those cracks and openings that's allowing water to come in, and you've got deck screws that are metal with no protective coating over them, what do you think happens? They start to rust, right? Why is rust a big deal? Why is he talking about rust is not a big deal? Who cares if the heads of the nails start to rust, or if the screw starts to rust, right? It's a beautiful structure that I'm getting ready to do up here. This is Fort Wright, Kentucky. Middle-aged deck system that we're getting ready to encapsulate in the world's toughest deck coating, Kong Armor, lifetime deck armor. I'll tell you why you should care if your fasteners begin to corrode. You should care because fastener corrosion of deck, of what we call death to decks, deck death. It's the #1 cause of it, right? Your fasteners begin to corrode, they begin to rust. And what happens is the wood of your deck, it was once alive. Most people have pine, and pine, just like this, it grew from the ground. And as it's growing, right, it's sucking in water from the ground, and that groundwater has minerals in it. What are minerals? Minerals are basically just metals, right? That's pretty much what they are. So you get a rusty fastener in that wood, and because that wood has mineral water in it, or was inducted with minerals, metal at one point in time, it's a small amount, but it's there. That wood starts to react with that rust, with that corrosion of that fastener, and all of a sudden you have a bunch of rotten boards. And it happens like that. It happens really quick. For a lot of people it does. Some people it can be a slower process. It just depends on the reaction and how bad it is, right? But some people, you know, close their deck up for return the next spring, and every board on their deck is rotten, right? Because of the fastener corrosion, or a lot of them are. Some people, it happens gradually over years. They get 1 or 2 a year that go bad, right? When we introduce, and I'm going to show you when I finish this deck, when we introduce an industrial grade coating, 30 to 50 times thicker, that's applied specially, right? How's it applied specially? Through a process that my company calls encapsulate, where we're actually taking this coating that's 30 to 50 times thicker than thin residential deck paints and stains, and via brush and roller, we're manually driving it into those cracks and those hairlines to cover them over. We're manually brushing it over and filling in all of these fastener entry points Once they're filled in, then we're going to build big layers over top of them. And the result is an extremely resurfaced deck that has true water lock, right? All of its cracks in its floor is covered in. All of its fastener entry points in its floor is covered in, right? That's where water hangs out. That is what the deck owner needs. Now, if we can catch them early in their ownership, when their boards are, these are new boards, these are new deck boards, they have barely any cracks in them, right? Like, the shadowing is really bad here. Let me turn around. So these are new deck boards that have barely any cracks in them, right? These are new stairs. If we can catch them early in their ownership, and we can get this industrial film on their new pine, their new wood, and block out most of the water from precipitation from getting in there, oh God, the benefits are extreme. Like crazy, absurdly extreme. We're talking the degradation of the deck system is severely limited, right? Because we've cut down that expansion and contraction cycle. We've ended it, right? Not ended it, but we've limited it severely because we've cut down on the amount of moisture that's getting into these planks and causing the swelling and causing the contraction. That's what opens these up, right? So the large paint manufacturers have you guys fooled into believing stains that are less than notebook paper, thin residential paints and stains applied by people that don't protect decks exclusively and that just want paid, that don't take the time to fill in cracks and fastener entry points. They got you guys fooled into believing that they're going to protect your deck systems. They're not. They never were. They're never going to. So anytime you guys waste your money on it, that's exactly what it is, waste of money. Your deck might become pretty for a few months, but via the way of protection, there's none, right? It's unfortunate. I just actually watched a lady, she did a quote with me, and I was quite a bit more expensive than another guy that, of course, he's using thin residential deck paints and stains, no special application process, no service promise, no warranty. I offer a lifetime service promise. I offer a warranty for our customers. We stay with them for life and help them, right? So they never have to completely paint or stain their structures again, right here in Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky. Of course, he didn't offer any of that either, right? So I get it. He was quite a bit less expensive. She invited me over to look at her deck. Just wanted to say, hey, just wanted to see if you thought this guy did a good job, right? And I basically just went over the same thing with her when I went to look at it that I did with you on film, and you could see eyes when I picked her deck system apart and said, you just gave this guy $3 grand to put basically water with food coloring on your deck that did nothing. It just changed the color of it. It didn't cover over any of your fasteners, didn't close off any water, didn't do nothing. You just changed the color of your deck. We could have done that. We could have went to Walmart and got some Thompson's water seal and a spray pump and sprayed it on there, right? Which is what the guys that are going around selling you guys what we call lifetime sealer, penetrating sealer, what they're doing to you. Same thing. Going around, Thompson's water seal, getting a garden spray pump, putting it on, pack it up. They pressure wash your deck. They take that Thompson's water seal and they spray it on your deck and they say, okay, give me $5 grand. Completely open to water, completely open everywhere, right? No UV protection. You guys have to start thinking about what you're doing if you're actually truly trying to protect your deck, or if you're just worried about its appearance, right? At any rate, I got everybody beat. My high build film here at Kong Armor is the most beautiful coating system on the planet. Doesn't make a difference. But just realize, if you're just trying to change the appearance of your deck and you don't really care about protection, then down the road there you're going to face that restoration and repair cost, right? Typically for most people it's tens of thousands of dollars. Why not nip that in the butt and get both at the same time? Want to learn more about me and what I do here in Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati? My name is Anthony Ford. I'm the nation's most notorious, what they call deck restoration painter. I restore and coat structures in an industrial grade coating system called Kong Armor. Go to kongarmor.com. Go there now and learn about me. Learn about Kong Armor. Learn about what we do. Look at all the thousands of people that I've helped. Have a good day.